Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. Yesterday we talked about some of the surprise teams from this last college football season. Today we're going to be talking about some of the teams that disappointed in college football this last season. Teams that had some sky-high expectations. Teams that we thought would contend for the playoff, contend for a conference title, maybe contend for a bowl game, but fell way short of those expectations. So today we're going to be breaking down a handful of teams that we feel like fit that category, but of course there's some that aren't up here, and as always we want to hear from you. Teams that you thought disappointed that we are not talking about. Do you think that these teams maybe exceeded expectations or shouldn't be classified as a disappointment? Let us know again down in the comments below. And before we get started, guys, as always, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. Again, it's the off season. It's the downtime for college football. We understand that. And while we have so much content lined up for you guys over these next few months, every hit of that like button, every comment, every new subscriber, every time you send a link of our video or share it or just pass it by with word of mouth, it helps our channel grow and helps us be that much better when the regular season rolls around. And really when we start predictions back up in the summer. So make sure to help us out with that. Help the Gridiron Expert grow, so we can continue to bring you non-stop college football content. So let's go ahead and jump into the disappointments. They're not nearly as fun to talk about for some as the surprise teams, but we have to do it. Let's start with Clemson. And the funny thing about Clemson is if you just look at the numbers, many would say it's not a disappointing year. The Tigers started off at number 3, started the year ranked 3rd in the country, finished the season ranked 14th. So many would say sure you had started the top 5 or a playoff contender, but still a top 15 finish, not too bad. But it's a disappointing year for Clemson based on the hype they had coming into the season and obviously the standard that Clemson has been held to over these last few years under Dabo Swinney. To start at number 3, to have a quarterback in DJ Uiagalelei, who many thought would be great, a Heisman contender. Many thought Clemson, even if they were to lose to Georgia in the season opener, which they did, many thought that they would run the table the rest of the way, make the playoff, and be just fine. But they didn't. They started off at number 3. They lost to Georgia, and the season was over for Clemson, at least playoff-wise, with their loss to NC State at the end of September. The Tigers were just 4-3 entering the final week of October, but they did win their final 6 games, including a top 10 victory over Wake Forest, including their bowl game over Iowa State, to clinch another double-digit win season, finishing the year at 10-3. For many, a double-digit win season is great, and for Clemson, that still is good. But when their success lately has been measured by ACC titles and playoff appearances and national championships, to fall short of all those things was a disappointment for many. 10-3 for the Tigers, and now they have lost their offensive coordinator, Tony Elliott. They have lost their defensive coordinator, and Brent Venables, which makes 2022 a lot more difficult for Clemson and obviously a team to keep your eye on going into next year. Sticking in the ACC, North Carolina, a major disappointment. Another team that started off in the top 10. The Tar Heels came in ranked 10th in the country, fresh off an Orange Bowl appearance the year before, and in their first game of the year, they lost 17-10 to an unranked Virginia Tech squad. Not a great start. But you know what? Everybody said it's okay. One loss, they're fine. Well, then a few weeks later, they lost 45-22 to Georgia Tech, a Georgia Tech team that finished 3-9. Yes, they upset number 9 Wake Forest, handing the Demon Deacons their first loss. Had to come back down 18 to win that game. But then they ultimately lost 38-21 to South Carolina in the Mayo Bowl. This North Carolina team that had one of the better quarterbacks in the draft, allegedly, many people consider, in Sam Howell. A team that, yes, defensively had some question marks, offensively lost a bunch of key players from the year before, but a team that still had a lot of high expectations and a lot of young players that we thought could make an impact fell way short of expectations. Where they go, 6-7? 6-7 for Mac Brown, the Tar Heels, in a year where many thought they could be a playoff dark horse. Very majorly disappointing year for UNC. Same can go for Iowa State, though. They were a team that the year before made a New Year's 6 bowl game, won the Fiesta Bowl over Oregon, started the season off in the top 10. The Cyclones came in at number 7, but their season was over by October, and at least when it comes to playoff berths and Big 12 title berths and things like that. The Cyclones lost their home game to Iowa. 27-17, a game where the score actually made it look a little bit closer than the game really was. They lost 31-29 to Baylor on the road. And ultimately, over the course of the rest of the season, Iowa State was wildly inconsistent, hanging with teams they shouldn't have. They crushed Texas, hung with Oklahoma, but lost to West Virginia. You didn't know which Iowa State team was going to show up week in and week out. And the Cyclones ultimately finished 7-6, lost to Clemson in their Cheez-It Bowl. And in a year where they had Big 12 title aspirations, where many, including ourselves, had them winning 10 to 11 games, winning 7, not even being close to the Big 12 title, not even being close to the playoff. Obviously, that was a major, major disappointment for Matt Campbell and his squad, especially when you consider all the returning talent that Iowa State had. So obviously, 2022 going to be a bit of a rebuild for the Cyclones. Not to say they're not going to be going bowling or anything like that, but the window for making the Big 12 title, for making the college football playoff, that was the year. This 2021 season was the year, and maybe a few years before Campbell can build the team back up to that point. Sticking in the Big 12, we have Texas. We're going to go back to Indiana, but I want to stick with the Big 12. Texas, high hopes under Steve Sarkisian. Brilliant offensive mind, coming over from Alabama, learned under Nick Saban, and now he's taking over one of the most historic college football programs in the country, in history, and obviously a program that for some reason every single year thinks they're going to go win a national championship, and that is just not the case. And you knew Texas was in trouble after week 2 when the Longhorns fell 40-21 to Arkansas, where the Razorbacks rushed for over 300 yards on the Longhorns. There were major questions after that, but Texas still had potential, guys. They just didn't know how to hold a lead. They had 3 straight blown double-digit leads. We're crushing Oklahoma, lost that game. We're up double digits against Oklahoma State, lost that game. We're up double digits against Baylor, lost that game. If Texas wins those 3 games, yes, they obviously finished with 8 wins, but you can't but wonder if the blown leads and the close losses took a toll on Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns, and that resulted in some other games they lost or maybe they shouldn't have. You win those games, momentum is completely changed, morale is completely different, and maybe Texas does contend for a Big 12 title. Maybe they don't finish, obviously, 5-7, or if they won all 3 of those, 8-4, maybe they finish with 9 or 10 wins. Who knows? But the Longhorns in year 1 going 5-7 under Steve Sarkisian, very unacceptable, which makes year 2 for him a lot bigger than maybe it should be. Typically you give new coaches a little bit of time, but Texas wants to win, and they want to win now. And going 5-7, not even making a bowl game, that's unacceptable by Texas standards, and they were a major disappointment in 2021. No one expected them to go win the Big 12. No one expected them to go make the college football playoff, but to not even make a bowl game, not acceptable. Not acceptable at all. Back to Indiana. We kind of skipped them to stick in the Big 12 thing, but back to Indiana. This was a team that had a historic 2020 season, went 6-2 in 2020, that COVID year. Started the year off at number 17. Now, everybody said, it's a lot bit tougher. No one's going to say Indiana's going to win 10, 11 games, something like that. But the Hoosiers should contend for they could be a dark horse in the Big Ten East, right? At least make another bowl game. And that was far from the case. In week 1, they got crushed to Iowa, 34-6. They lost a home game later on to Cincinnati, 38-24. The Hoosiers were 2-2 entering October. So after the first month, 2-2, losses to Iowa, who made the Big Ten championship, lost to Cincinnati, who made the playoff, no big deal. But after that, the Hoosiers lost 8 straight. They didn't win another game. They did not win another game. 8 straight losses to end the year. Only 2 of those 8 losses being decided by 1 possession. So a year after going 2-6, the Hoosiers went 2-10. And that, guys, it's sad. And yes, they battled injuries. Yes, they battled a tougher schedule. Yes, obviously it was on a COVID year, something that the Hoosiers clearly benefited from in 2020. But no one, I think, saw the Hoosiers dropping off that much. And obviously a very, very tough year for Tom Allen. A lot of answers that he's going to have to provide going into 2022. Penn State, sticking in the Big Ten. Another team that, started off middle of the pack, 19th in the country, rose as high as number 4 in the country. Penn State was 4th in the nation at one point, had quality wins over Wisconsin and Auburn. But number 4 before they lost to Iowa by 3 in Iowa City. It then lost to Illinois in 7 overtimes, and that to me was the thing, guys. That was what ultimately ended Penn State's hopes. Every year that seems to happen for James Franklin and Nittany Lions. They start off high, have high expectations. Ooh, will they win the Big Ten? Could they make the playoff? And they lose to a team they shouldn't, because the loss to Iowa wasn't going to ruin their year. That wasn't going to ruin it. The loss to Ohio State wasn't going to ruin their year. It's a loss to someone they shouldn't lose to. In the past, it's been a team like Michigan State or someone like that. This year it was Illinois in 7 overtimes. The loss to Iowa sparked a 3-game losing streak. A 5-0 start turned into a 2-6 finish, capped off by a 14-point loss to Arkansas in the Outback Bowl. Penn State finishing 7-6. Again, once number 4 in the entire country. Washington, they had high hopes this year. Many thought they could take the Pac-12 North away from Oregon in year 2 under Jimmy Lake. But they started the year at number 20 and lost their season opener to FCS Montana. And right then, you knew Washington was done. It's hard to recover from a loss like that. Not to say your season's done. No one thought Washington would make the playoff, right? So, bowl game's still intact, not a conference loss, championship's still intact, but when you lose a game like that with high expectations and you lose your season opener to a team maybe you shouldn't, morale drops significantly. Washington went from number 20th in that loss to Montana to 4-4 entering November. Still had a hope for a bowl game, but lost all 4 games in November, including a 40-13 loss to Washington State to finish the year at 4-8. And to cap it all off, Jimmy Lake got removed as head coach of the Huskies. USC. So many things going wrong with USC. Clay Helton let go early. Keaton Slovis later transfers to Pittsburgh. Jackson Dart now to Ole Miss. Lincoln Riley's in. So much has happened in the offseason for USC, but during the season they started off at number 15, but in week 2 lost to Stanford, and that saw the collapse of the Trojans. That 42-28 loss to Stanford ended USC. The Trojans lost 6 of their last 7 games. After that, or as if they got throughout the rest of the season. This is a USC team, guys, that every year has sky-high expectations, and they rarely meet them. Lincoln Riley, now one of the most hated people in college football, is hoping to change that track record. We're beginning to wonder if he will be able to, although with the addition of Caleb Williams, it is looking possible. It is looking like the future could be bright. Final 2 teams here, guys, Florida and Texas A&M. The Gators, they won the SEC East in 2020. We knew they were going to take a step back with the losses of Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts and so many key offensive playmakers, but no one saw Florida collapsing as much as they did in the final 2 months of the year. Keep in mind, this is a Florida team, guys, that in week 3 only lost to Alabama by 2, 31-29. A Florida team that entering October was ranked 10th in the nation before losing to Kentucky, 20-13. The Gators finished the year 2-5, had to beat Florida State in the season finale just to make a bowl game, and then got killed by UCF 29-17 in the Gasparilla Bowl. Dan Mullen was ultimately fired by the Gators. Billy Napier from Louisiana has now been promoted, or now is the new head coach of the Florida Gators. How he fares in 2022 in his first year remains to be seen. We'll talk plenty on that in the offseason. But a year where Florida, again, it was going to be a battle between Florida and Georgia who would win the SEC East. No one thought the Gators would be eliminated from SEC East contention by the 2nd or 3rd week of October. No one saw that coming. And then finally, Texas A&M. Why are they disappointing? They picked it up towards the end of the year. Well, they're disappointing because you started the year off at number 6, and all offseason long last year, people said this could be the year that Texas A&M takes the West. Alabama has to come to College Station. A&M, if they beat Alabama, they could win the West. And the ironic thing is, guys, A&M did beat Alabama. The Aggies came into the season ranked 6th in the country, fresh off the Orange Bowl victory over North Carolina, but they lost their quarterback in week 2. They lost Haynes King in week 2 to Colorado. They later lost to Arkansas. Then they lost to Mississippi State. And that loss to Mississippi State ultimately eliminated from Texas A&M from any contention of anything. No SEC championship, no college football playoff, because even though they beat Alabama, they were going to need more help because they already had 2 conference losses. And that's what hurts for Texas A&M. When you beat Alabama, you can't help but think we have a shot at winning the division, maybe even making the playoff. But because of the 2 losses that Texas A&M had prior to that, the win to Alabama was great. It was monumental, but ultimately really didn't mean anything. The Aggies rose back up to number 15 in the country, lost their season finale 27-24 to LSU, and then didn't even get to play in their bowl game against Wake Forest due to COVID. So like we said, it was a great victory over Alabama, one of the biggest upsets of the season, one of the better games of the season, but because they were unable to take care of business against other SEC opponents, ultimately the win against Alabama meant nothing. Texas A&M finished 8-4. But with their recruiting class, the way Jimbo Fisher is recruiting, the future, again, looks very bright in College Station to maybe where they can compete against Alabama for many years to come. So there you go, guys. There are your disappointing teams in college football from 2021. Who's up here that shouldn't be? Who's not up here that should be? We want to hear from you guys down in the comments below. On Monday, we will be talking about teams you need to watch out for in 2022. Maybe they're going to be playoff contenders. Maybe they're going to be conference championship contenders. Maybe they're just teams that have very interesting storylines. But we're going to be talking about them on Monday before we start breaking down the Super Bowl. And obviously the Rams and the Bengals, that is going to be a fun one. We've got plenty of content coming your way next week, so do not miss out on it, and you will not miss out on it if you continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. Help our channel grow, guys. We cannot do any of this without you, so make sure to do all of that. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.